Chairman's Chaplain and the Managing Director.
Good evening, members of the public. Please remain standing for prayers.
Let us pray. Gracious and loving God, tonight each of us come with those different concerns of our communities on our hearts. And Lord, we pray for wisdom. We pray for that ability to hear one another in all that is said. Father, we pray that you would help all those informed in the decision-making process to come to a common mind. We pray for unity and for respect. We pray, gracious Lord, that your good and perfect will would be done this evening. Father, we offer unto you our communities, our families. And we thank you for that privilege of being those here that represent you and represent them. So, gracious Lord, in all that is done this evening, we pray that you would be honoured and that you would be glorified in our midst. Amen.
Please be seated. Item 1 of the agenda, members. We have apologies received in the office. Councillor Burton, Councillor Hudson and Councillor Oldham. Are there any other apologies? No? Thank you. Item 2, the minutes of the meeting held on the 11th of December 2018. Are they agreed, members? Agreed. Thank you. Item 3, declarations of interest. No, thank you. 4, announcements from the chairman, leader or head of page service. I would merely like to say that since the last meeting I have attended quite a number of events and functions, and I would be more than happy to list them, but it might take some time. Suffice to say that I enjoyed many carols during December, and I think I've almost word perfect on most of them. I've attended some very nice civic dinners and the very moving Holocaust Memorial Service, which was attended by the Lord Lieutenant of Essex, and also the 70th anniversary service at Basildon, which was also very interesting. I was particularly impressed by the Essex Wing Air Training Corps awards ceremony, and I was most impressed with their discipline, smartness and attention to detail. I'll now move to item 5 on the agenda, public questions and members on notice. There are none. Business from last council meeting. There is none. Item 7, to note the minutes of executive and committee meetings held between the period 1st December 2018 and 31st January 2019 as listed. Are they noted, members? Thank you. Now move on to item 8. And I think Councillor Steptoe, you will be presenting on that.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm not sure that your microphone is actually working, Chairman.
I think it is.
Oh, that's better.
I'll move my
couldn't hear
chair.
you before.
I'll move my chair forward.
Thank you, Chairman. This item was referred by the Investment Board on the 16th of January to Council with recommendations relating to approval of the OBC and the ADP. As Chairman of the Investment Board, I'm pleased to speak on this report. The OBC is a product of the Council's asset strategy. This strategy has a clear vision to reduce the future running costs associated with the Council's assets, generate capital receipts to help fund future investment, bring forward an optimised asset base that is fit for purpose and for the 21st century operation, enable quality service delivery for residents and visitors through a sustained programme of transformation. This project has seen officers and members working together on a complex, critical project in order to bring forward clear proposals to deliver the Council's objectives through a highly integrated delivery programme across the Council's key strategic assets. I would like to thank the officers and the working party that have put a great deal of work into this and spent many hours on this project. Therefore, Chairman, I move the recommendations in the report as printed on page 8.1.3, item 2.1. Thank you, Chairman.
Do I have a seconder? Thank you. Councillor Giano.
Chairman, I'd like to second that and also have the right to come back after the debate.
Thank you. Councillor Mrs Rowe.
Thank you, Chairman. I have read the report and I too would like to thank all the officers and the working party that have been involved with this. I'm a resident too, I'm not just a councillor, as are all of us in this room tonight. And I'm hearing rumblings that this project of moving the council chamber is going to cost the taxpayer millions, which is clearly incorrect. But can we just have some clarification of that, please, Chairman? Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, so the outline business case as presented as part of this report does set out the financials for the project. It's estimated at this stage of the project that there will be a net capital requirement of £0.6 million. Obviously, that's the net requirement, so the intention as set out in the business case is that proceeds from capital receipts from some of the sites would cross-subsidise the building of the new facility at the Freight House. But it's correct that at this stage there would just be a net funding cost of £0.6 million.
Councillor Mr Hoy.
Thank you, Chairman. Sorry, I thought Councillor Evers indicated before, but I was wrong.
He may well have done, but I noticed you first.
That's okay, thank you.
Sorry, Councillor.
I'm not a member of the Investment Board, but I have attended, I think, all the meetings relating to this. And I think I've said in that meeting that I do have concerns about this business case. I'm aware this is an outline business case, it's not yet a full business case, and I do understand that. However, I think perhaps I may or may not, I'm not sure what Councillor Mrs Rowe was referring to, but I've got concerns. We are using assets worth nearly £3 million to provide essentially an office at the Freight House, which may have additional commercial property, but I still haven't been convinced or see anything to convince me that spending £2.8 million of our money in that way is the best use of those assets or the money that we can realise from those assets. And I do have problems with what the route this business case is taking and how it will end up. So that's really it. I was just trying to echo my concerns around that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Reeves. Sorry if I had those the wrong way round, but
No, that's fine, Chairman. Thank you. The project is a large one in relation to projects undertaken by the council in the past. If we as a council are to pursue this project, while I don't have any major concerns with the strategic outline case, I do have a number of concerns with the outline business case. I have building industry qualifications, many years of first-hand experience working in the industry at the level this venture is projected to be at. As such, I have questioned at the Investment Board Committee the approach being pursued by officers and the member working party with regards to the best risk/financial risk route, proposing that we partner with a company to take this on. My experience of the trade is that the success of a project is not down to the company, but down to the project contracts manager and the team he pulls in to work on the project. To claim that the risk is lowered by partnering with a company is, in my experience, a fallacy. The fact is that a building contract is only a reduced risk if you have the best person running it, not the best company on paper. I am familiar with the internal workings of building companies that operate in this level of construction, and I can assure you that even though they may be told we may be told that they have been vetted and are considered sound, that they are very good at hiding their problems. I remind the Council of the Carillion debacle. Conversely, any problems that come to light in-house would be able to be dealt with, and they would be in the light. Although the total figure for the project is large, the sums are made up by the joining of a number of smaller building projects, not one big one. So the complexity is lent more towards one of organisation, not complicated building methods. The skills required to run the projects are infinitely available to be successfully brought in-house. I was initially surprised, considering the Council's current appetite for setting up their own businesses, when the in-house option, although it was talked about, has never really been given serious consideration. The reports presented to us at the Investment Board, to my mind, read from the point of making the report match the decision, rather than giving serious consideration to other options, such as the in-house option. As I've said earlier, my experience in the trade is that far from minimising the risk by going down the partnership route, the risk is exactly the same. The difference is that by going down the partnership route, the Council is giving away a large amount of money to the partner company. The question then has to be, in this time of tight finances at Council, are we prepared to sign away the large amount of money we would be losing to bolster the partnership company's profits, which is pretty much all we will achieve by going down the route that this Council is being steered? Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Giano, did you say you would like to come back?
Sorry. Chairman, members, officers, as portfolio holder for Enterprise, I welcome the opportunity to speak in support of this report. The Asset Delivery Program is a highly integrated program that will bring forward an optimised asset base and deliver the objectives of the Council's asset strategy. Given the scale of the program, the Council has sought the advice of experts, support officers throughout the process, a prudent and sensible approach. The outline business case has been completed with rigour, due diligence, with strong input from the member working party, which I'd like to say thank you very much for their hard work. Thank you very much.
Councillor Cutmore.
I didn't want to jump in front of the councillor just spoke. Just to say, I think what Councillor Eaves was talking about was actually considered quite rightly at the investment board that we had. We are not a metropolitan borough, nor are we a county. We're of a size where we have to seek help from other parties, and we need the right help. And I think in the parties that we've actually consulted so far, we've had that right help. Chairman, I think if members refer to 11.2, which refers to revenue costs, And remembering that this is an outline business case, so it's not the full business case, we've got to proceed to that. So we're not there yet. But it does say the estimated revenue costs of the preferred scheme are being compared against the due minimum option, as summarised in the table below. And if members look just above level 11.2, there is a table there. This demonstrates the preferred option could generate ongoing annual revenue savings in excess of £300,000 per annum for the council compared to the due minimum option. This is based on the assumption that the council's future revenue costs under the due minimum option would increase from current annual expenditure levels in order to maintain the current office accommodation at recognised industry standards. So, Chairman, we need to spend some money on our buildings in any event. And some of our buildings are very ancient. In fact, some of them go back to the 13th century. But having said that, Chairman, that office is no longer used. So I think if you look at that, and you also look at the table under 11.5, which shows the capital funding, I think what we're actually planning and taking forward is quite imaginative. I think it will provide officers in the right place at the right time for our residents and for our staff in a modern environment. Because what we have, unfortunately, is ageing fast and needing money spending on it. So I think I'd like to thank all those involved in this, and especially the working group, that they've taken this forward. But I just repeat, Chairman, once this is finished, we're looking at that £300,000, which I think is very important. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Reeves.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just point out one thing, that the cost savings that Councillor Cutmore is talking about, they would be achieved whichever route we went. What I was trying to highlight is that the route that the council is being steered is actually going to cost the council a lot more money to do the build. When Councillor Cutmore pointed out that we did consider the option of self-build when we went through committee, it was quite early on dismissed. And I had some severe reservations that I did make clear in the committee, and there were other members who did recognise that at the time. Thank you.
Thank you. There being no other members showing, the recommendation is that it is proposed that Council resolves... Mrs McPherson.
Thank you, Chairman. Just one question. Obviously, listening to councillors, has there been any independent review into this business case as yet? Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, we've taken independent specialist advice along the way. We've commissioned experts in the field to help us prepare the business case, so we're confident that we have taken the necessary expertise, and we have recently been through an independent review of which details of that will be released in due course as well. So that weren't ready in time for this report, but we have taken independent assurance along the way as well. Thank you.
Yes, Mrs McPherson.
Thank you, Chairman. Just out of interest, who is this independent group? Just so we know their accreditation. Thank you.
Councillor Steptoe.
Thank you, Chairman. That's exactly what I was just going to say. The report, report has been carried out by Gateway Assured Review by local partnership organised jointly and owned by HM Treasury and the LGA.
Thank you. We'll now then move to the recommendation, and it is proposed that Council resolves, 1, that the outline business case for the asset delivery programme as set out in Appendix A be approved and published with appropriate redaction, and secondly, that a further £298,200 be drawn down from general balances to fund the resources required to progress the programme to full business case stage. Is that agreed, members?
Agreed.
May my vote be recorded against on both counts, please, Chairman?
Do you wish me to take a vote?
I'd rather a vote, yes, if that's possible, thank you.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm happy simply to record.
Could you take a vote, please? Then, thank you.
Sorry. Was there somebody that wanted to speak? No? Is it just to record that you were against? All right, let me take a vote for the avoidance of doubt. All those in favour, please show. Thank you. Those against? Very well. Good. Thank you. That is carried. We now proceed to item 8.2, the report of the Planning Policy Subcommittee, and I think Councillor
Thank you, Chairman.
is going to lead on that.
The Planning Policy Subcommittee held a meeting on the morning of the 31st of January, and the report that has been circulated to members, I believe, is a true and accurate record of what took place at that meeting. There were two items that were required to be referred to the full council with, excuse me, with recommendations. One was the local plan, local development scheme 2018 to 2021, and the subcommittee's recommendations in relation to this item are on page 8.2.2. And there was also an item issue relating to Gypsy and Travellers issue, paper and sustainability appraisal, regulation 18 consultation, with the subcommittee's recommendations in respect of this issue on pages 8.2.4 and 8.2.5, and I submit those to full council, sir.
Thank you, Councillor Sperring. Councillor Ward.
Thank you, Chairman.
Can I, before you start, are you going to be speaking on the first item?
No, I'm going to speak on the second one.
Can I deal with the first item?
Certainly.
Separately.
Thank you.
So if we take the first item, and the recommendation is that the Council resolves that the draft local development scheme 2018 to 2021 be adopted. All those in favour? Any against? That's approved. Thank you. Yeah, we'll move to the second part. Councillor Ward.
Thank you, Chairman. I would like to propose that this consultation is withdrawn. I believe this delay will give the Council time to fully digest and understand all the implications to enable us to prepare a plan that reflects the balance required between the diverse needs within the Gypsy and Traveller community and the concerns of the majority of the residents that comprise the settled community in this district. Thank you, Jim.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor Steptoe.
Yes, Chairman, I'm happy to second that, and I'll keep the right to speak at the end of the debate.
Does anybody else wish to speak? Councillor Mr Mason.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I'm a member of that subcommittee, so I'd like to ask Councillor Ward what's changed since that subcommittee meeting, because I've been advised of nothing, and given that nothing has changed, I will not be supporting a withdrawal of the public consultation, because no one has told me why. In the second place, at that subcommittee, I asked the Managing Director why the Council had been unable to take any positive steps to bring Mitchell Inns Farm forward as a permanent travellers' site. And he suggested that I bring the matter up at full council. Well, I'm doing so, and through you, Chairman, I'm directing that question as well to Councillor Ward as portfolio holder for planning. Thank you.
Councillor Ward.
Thank you, Chairman. As we recognise, there were two sites that were withdrawn, which has changed the actual consultation completely. We know that there are another 2 sites that are going to be subject to inspection. We also have, I believe there's a planning application at Michelin's Farm, which may have a bearing on it. So with these particular planning processes, I believe together with the documentation which has come from central government on Gypsy and Travellers, which I have been reading, we need to go back and understand fully bringing our consultation forward with that included. That is why I'm asking and urging this council to withdraw this consultation at the moment so that we can present it later. Thank you.
Councillor Mason.
Second part of my question has not been answered, Chairman.
As far as that is concerned, may I refer to the Managing Director, please? You asked him, sir.
Chairman, may I come back? Can I reiterate, please, because it's not been understood. Councillor Ward was present, along with others, at the subcommittee meeting, and I asked that very same question of the Managing Director, who declined to answer, saying, please ask at full council. Clearly, there's no point in asking the Managing Director again, because he wasn't able to answer it on that occasion. So I'm directing the question to the portfolio holder for planning, who should know the answer, if there is a cogent reason why we've been unable to bring that site forward.
Okay.
There are planning applications coming forward on those sites. Therefore, as far as I'm concerned, we need to look at everything in relation to that. Thank you, as far as I can go.
Does that answer your question, Councillor Mason?
Chairman, it's an answer. It is not an answer which I think answers the question I put. But nevertheless, the public are here, the members are here, and in due time, so will the inspector who looks at this particular part of our LDF. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Mason. Councillor Stanley.
Thank you, Chairman. It's obvious that since 2014 we've been discussing this Michelin site for the Travellers, and it seems to be taking a long, long time with no resolution whatsoever. And here I find that we are waiting for cooperation from 2 other districts in a report which is an update of 2019. And yet we've still got nowhere to go. When are we going to, and I asked that to the portfolio holder, when are we going to get this site? Because while we're not getting this site and not made a decision in this chamber, they will forever lasting using up Greenbelt, which we don't really want. So I asked the question, when will we be getting this site off their own backs, not off of other councils? Thank you.
Do you wish to respond to that, Councillor Ward?
I think I responded earlier on. As far as that was concerned, we are at this moment looking at sites. At the moment, Michelin's Farm is our core strategy choice. It is the site that is designated for Gypsy and Travellers, which is in our allocations. And as far as I'm concerned, that is the site that is designated. Thank you.
Councillor Cutmore.
Thank you, Chairman. Just one thing I'd like to clarify for both members and members of the public is that the sites that we were looking at, we were envisaging looking at within the consultation, are not sites that have been put forward by this council. They are sites that have been put forward by members of the public, by landowners and businesses that own land in the district, and they have put that land forward, and we are obliged at a certain stage to actually consult the public on how we take that forward. They are not sites that we have chosen to put forward. I just want to clarify that because it has been said elsewhere that these are sites that have been put forward by this council. Well, that's not the case.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Stanley, do you want to come back on a point of clarification? Okay.
Thank you, Chairman. designated sites are all very well, but when are we going to make that site a site, not designated? We continue to do so since 2014. And if we continue to do this, we could be in 2024 by the time we get this resolved.
I think you've had your answer on that. You
So-
may not be happy with
no,
it,
no,
but I think you've had
I
your
want
answer.
to know what designated actually means, please, Chairman.
Councillor Mr Hoy.
Thank you, Chairman. Sorry to drag up Michelin's Farm again. I understand the answer. Well, I understand the words that Councillor Ward used. I'm not sure, as Mr Mason said, that he actually answered his question. Could Councillor Ward? He mentioned he doesn't think it's a viable. I'm not sure the words he used. Actually, I don't want to put words in his mouth. A site which can go forward with at the moment because of planning permissions that may be coming forward. Obviously, this site has been the designated site for some time, and I think the question is why hasn't it been moved forward with earlier? And is it that the landowner is getting so fed up with our failure to do so that they've been forced to find other uses for the land, and that's why they're putting planning applications forward?
Did you want to respond to that?
To the best of my knowledge, Michelin's Farm has been sold. There is a new owner who I believe is putting in planning permission on that site. There was the concerns, I believe, when the inspectors were looking at the site, that there was little chance of it coming forward. It would seem to me, with a new owner and the site being cleared, there is a better chance of it coming forward.
Okay, we have a proposal to withdraw the this particular report, and it has been seconded. Did you want to come back, Councillor Steptoe?
Thank you, Chairman. I don't think there's anything further that I can add other than to say we do need to wait for this planning application to come forward. Until we've received that, we're talking hypothetically here a lot of the time.
Okay, Councillor Mountain.
Thank you.
Sorry?
Just come back, Chairman. I did ask to be the last speaker.
I will. It was as you stood up that I saw Councillor Mountain raise his hand, but I think I've got to allow you to speak if
Thank you. It was just,
but this will be the last speaker if you wanted to come back afterwards.
Councillor Ward has asked for this to be withdrawn till later. I just wondered if there was a time period on what later, when this is likely to come back, or.
Councillor Ward.
The only thing I can say is when the work is completed, when we've looked at all the various things, when we look at items 1, 2 and 3 and the questions that are on there.
Councillor Steptoe. There are no other questions, no other comments. Right, Councillor Steptoe.
Thank you, Chairman. As I've already said, we've got to wait for this planning application to come forward. There's a lot of work that's got to be done behind the scenes to really understand what all the implications are, including what government are bringing forward with their travel and gypsy requirements. So all of that needs to come to fruition in the fullness of time. To put a time limit on it is going to be very difficult. Thank you, Chairman.
So the proposal, and has been seconded, is that this report be withdrawn. Is that agreed, members? Very well. I will put it to a vote if that is the wish. All those in favour of withdrawal? Those against?
I'd like my name recorded as being against, Chairman.
Thank you. Thank you. You do that, Sonia? Thank you. That's withdrawn. So we'll proceed now to item 9. Report on urgent decisions, there are none. And item 10, report of the leader on the work of the Executive, Councillor Cutmore.
Thank you very much, Chairman. This is the fourth ordinary council meeting of the 2018-19 municipal year, and I would like to welcome all members. Since the meeting on the 11th of December, the Executive has met once, during which considerations included the Q3 2018-19 Financial Management and Performance Report and the latest position on the Council's key performance indicators, approving the transfer of £600,000 of budget, the in-year underspend to the Local Development Fund Reserve to increase the funds for planning policy work to support the delivery of the local plan, joint strategic plan and related development plan documents over the next 5 years, delegating authority to the Assistant Director Environmental Services in consultation with the portfolio holder for environment to approve the Innovert Community Grant Award of £45,000 for play equipment at Great Wakering Open Space and the consequent execution of the project, noting the arrangements being made to secure the long-term visitor potential of Wallasey Island, including an event in May 2020 allied to the Council's Discover 2020 Festival, agreeing the ongoing procedures for allocating voluntary sector grants fund for the financial year 2019-20, and noting that the process aligns outcomes with local strategic priorities as detailed in the Council's business plan and the joint Rochford and Castle Point Health and Wellbeing Strategy, agreeing that the Rayleigh, Rochford and District Association for Voluntary Services will receive top-sliced funding from the same pot based on performance as the community connector and expert. Other matters my executive colleagues and I have dealt with include improving the formal response to Basildon Borough Council's consultation on its local plan publication, Draft Regulation 19, agreeing the Brownfield Land Register December 2018 be accepted into the Council's evidence base and published on the Council's website. As always, Chairman, I will be happy to take any questions from members in respect of the work of the Executive, and I'm sure my Executive colleagues will only be happy to contribute where appropriate. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Mr Mason.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to ask a question about the local plan budget, if you like. It's been referred to by the leader in the fact of transferring £600,000 underspend to the LDF reserve. It talks about 5 years. What does the council expect to spend in total, including money spent to date, on the new local plan, please?
Councillor Cutmore. Councillor Cutmore.
If you'd like to take a look at the medium-term strategy, I believe it's in there, and last meeting we had, Chairman.
Thank you.
We have our financial officer, our 151 officer here. I don't recall seeing that figure. Can she please tell us what the figure is, please, for the total spend from the inception, which was a year or so ago, to the end of the 5 year, how much we're going to spend, please, on the local plan, the new local plan. Thank you.
Thank you. So our best estimate of the total spend at the moment is in the region of about just under £1 million. So we have already got some reserves set aside, which will help fund that, and this will help obviously bolster the funds that are required. But I would say at this stage it's quite early in the process, and we don't have necessarily a real clear indication of the total spend at this stage, but that's our best estimation at the moment. I would say, allied to that, as part of the financial strategy that we've presented, we have taken significant ongoing revenue budget out of the ongoing base budget from 1920 onwards. So this fund is to support the works which would otherwise have been funded through the revenue budget, which has enabled us to set a balanced budget going forward.
Thank you.
What was the figure again? I'm a little hard of hearing.
So as I said, we haven't got an absolute perfect estimate at this stage, but we're working on the assumption it would be just under £1 million.
Councillor Cutmore.
Chairman, just to add to that, don't forget we're also proceeding with a joint strategic plan with other authorities, which we hope to gain significant infrastructure investment in all of South Essex, not just roads, etc. We're talking about other things as well that everybody needs. So that's all part of our plans coming forward too. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
There's no other questions. That's the next item.
If there are no other questions, then we can pass to the next item, which is item 11, motions on notice. There are none. Now, maybe some members of the public who have come along for a specific item on the agenda, which we've now passed, if they wanted to leave, please, this would be a convenient time to do so. No? Okay. Item 12, setting the council tax 2019 to 2020. Are you going to? Councillor Cutmore.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Chairman, and through you, councillors, members of the public and press. This is my 15th budget as leader of the Conservative administration. The budget pressures under which local government operates remain significant, and this authority continues to look closely at opportunities to make efficiency savings and generate new sources of revenue. This is not only in response to the removal of government grants, but also to deal with significant cost increases arising from inflationary and demographic pressures. Looking to the future, we'll be refreshing our business plan that sets out the high-level priorities that the Council will work towards over the medium term. This will incorporate the Council's plans to deliver an asset programme which aims to maximise the value from the Council's key strategic sites. Our current priorities as set out in the 2016-2020 plan are to become financially self-sufficient, to use early intervention to manage demand on our services, to maximise our assets and to enable communities. Despite the challenges faced, we have continued to deliver excellent services to our residents. Our achievements over the past year include being placed joint second in the League for Recycling out of more than 350 local authorities across England. Hosting a wedding fair at our newest wedding venue, the Old House, Rochford, on the 20th of May. Our 15th annual Wild Woods Day, which took place on the 14th of July at Hockley Woods, where visitors had a chance to try their hand at activities and stroll around the pop-up marketplace. Continuing to provide local business with advice and support, including hosting various business breakfasts. Adopting the Environmental Health Service Plan. Mandatory child sexual exploitation awareness training for Rochford District Council taxi drivers in July, August and September. Becoming a hate incident reporting centre where members of the public can be assisted to report a hate incident or crime. As a responsible council, we will continue to look at areas where costs can be reduced or income generated. However, in 2019-20, there is a need to increase council tax by 2.98% to help fund the financial pressures that the district is currently facing. This equates to an increase of 13 pence per household per week on a Band D property. The proposal is to set Rochford District Council tax for a Band D property at £230.31 per year. The breakdown of annual council tax for a Band D property would be Essex County Council £1,179.63, Essex County Council Social Care Levy £90.81, Essex County Council Fire and Rescue £70.38, Essex Police Fire and Crime Commissioner £192.96, the average town and parish council is £48.66, and Rochford District Council, as I've said, is £230.31. The total average council tax for a Band D property for 2019-20 would be £1,814.82, an increase of £84.11. That's approximately 4.9%. In conclusion, although these are still difficult financial times, Rochford District Council remains committed to providing excellent services to our residents and partners. With this in mind, we will be doing all we can to deliver innovative and high-quality services. Chairman, I commend Rochford District Council tax for members' approval, and thank you.
Councillor Mr Hoy.
Thank you, Chairman. I would be fairly brief. Obviously, we discussed the budget last week, and members here will know how I voted on it and the comments I made then. I don't want to go on and on about what I said last week. Obviously, members from that will be aware that I don't necessarily agree that it's a well-run, financially, in any way, financially well-run council. I did point out about the inconsistencies on that in relation to the ICT contract and the ICT capital budgets, and also in relation to what I would regard as reserve accounting with £340,000 in a legal reserve, and I still have no answer to whether there is a legal case ongoing or not. Not that I could say so if there was, I suppose. So I have real problems with the budget. I believe that there are significant sums of money available in reserves which we haven't made use of. I believe some of the ICT budget is now over. We're now paying more for the current ICT contract than we were for the old one, and the new one was supposed to be saving money. I do have problems with it. I still can't see how I can support a 2.98% increase on that basis. Thank you.
Did you wish to come back on that, Councillor Campbell? No, thank you. Okay. Councillor Mr Mason.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm not going to go over any old ground because I just heard the interesting consolidation figure as being an increase overall in council taxes and precepts and everything of 4.9%. Whereas, of course, we know that inflation is running around less than half of that. I think it's about time government actually decided to take a good view across the whole spectrum of local government and precepting and kept it to a total of the rate of inflation rather than inflation busting, Chairman. Thank you.
As there are no other members indicating, we have 10 items under the recommendation. I'm not going to read them out all out individually. Unlike last week, none of the items require a recorded vote, so I can, if members approve, take all 10 items together. But if you wish me to take them individually, I'm happy to do so.
Them obviously I would have no problem with, and some I do. Thank you.
Okay, fair enough. In that case, I will take them individually. Item 1, that the council tax requirement for the council's own purposes for 2019 to 20, excluding parish and town precepts, is 7,270,915. All those in favour, please show. All those against? That's agreed. Item 2, that the council tax requirement of the council, together with the parish and town councils, be £8,807,194 for the same period. All those in favour, please show. All those against, please show. That is agreed. Item 3, that the basic amount of council tax, including parish and town precepts, be £278.97 for the year. This being the council tax requirement, £8,807,194 divided by the council tax base of 31,570.4. All those in favour, please show. Those against? Thank you, that is agreed. Item 4, that the total of parish and town precepts included within the above be £1,536,279. All those in favour, please show. Those against? That is agreed. Item 5, that the basic rate of council tax relating to the council without parish and town precepts be £230.31, which is a 2.98% increase. All those in favour, please show. All those against? Thank you. Thank you. That is agreed. Item 6, that the total tax for both the council and the town and parishes councils be as set out in the schedule in Appendix B. All those in favour, please show. And those against, that is agreed. Item 7, that the sums given above for Band D be now shown in the particular valuations bands A to H be as set out in the schedule in Appendix C. All those in favour, please show. Those against, that is agreed. Item 8, that the precepts issued to the Council in respect of Essex County Council, Essex Police, Fire and Crime Commissioner and Essex County Fire and Rescue Service for each valuation band A to H be as set out in the schedule in Appendix D. All those in favour, please show. Those against, that's agreed. Item 9, nearly there, that the total council tax for the area for each valuation band A to H be as set out in Appendix E. These are the amounts set as council tax for the year 2019 to 2020. All those in favour, please show. Thank you. Those against, please show. That is agreed. Item 10, that the total of the sums payable into the Council's General Fund in respect of redistributed business rates, surplus levy, levy, surplus grant, new homes bonus and adjustments from the collection fund be £3,574,907. All those in favour, please show. And those against, thank you. That completes item 12. Item 13 is the council tax empty homes premium. I think maybe you're going to lead on that, or present, I should say.
Thank you. Yes, the purpose of the report is to provide members with proposals for increasing the amount of the council tax empty homes premium charged on long-term empty properties. The Local Government Finance Act 2012 amended previous legislation to allow local authorities to levy a 50% premium on properties which have been unoccupied and substantially unfurnished for 2 years or more. It was agreed by Council at its meeting on the 22nd of October 2013 to introduce this premium from the 1st of April 2014. And now further legislation has been passed to enable local authorities to increase the amount of premium levied. The proposal as set out in the report is to increase to 100% from the 1st of April 2019 properties that have been unoccupied and unfurnished for 2 years or more, and from the 1st of April 2020 for properties that have been unoccupied and substantially unfurnished between 5 and 10 years, to 200%, and to 300% for properties that have been unoccupied and unfurnished for 10 years or more from April 21. There's a couple of statutory exemptions. So if a property is left empty by a serving member of the armed forces who's living elsewhere in accommodation provided by the Secretary of State for Defence, that is exempt from this legislation, and also empty annexes. So, yes, the primary reason for the change in policy is not financially driven. However, it's possible a small amount of additional income may be generated for the council, but the overriding aim of the policy is to bring empty homes back into use, and as such we've been working across the council to try and bring empty homes back into use wherever possible. So, yeah, that's all I was going to say on this recommendations.
Councillor Mr. Hoyer.
Thank you, Chairman. This is very welcome. I do support this. I understand the difficulty of perhaps assessing the financial implications of it, but as it says in the in paragraph 3.3, I think probably the ultimate intention is really to bring homes into use. Has there been any assessment of how many additional homes may be brought into use with this policy?
The figure I've got at the moment for the number of properties that are currently facing the levy under the current 2-year rule is the 65 properties, but obviously the extension to the legislation for properties that have been unoccupied for a longer period of time won't come into force until the following financial year, so we can't give a reasonable estimate of what that might be at that stage, because obviously our policy is to try and bring those homes back into use wherever possible. But at the moment, there's 65 properties that are subject to the levy.
Thank you. Will those 65 properties be, or owners be assisted through other parts of the council as well, i.e. through housing officers trying to explain to them how this will affect them and how they could perhaps benefit themselves and other people by bringing houses back into use as well? Thank you. By carrot and stick, in other words.
Yeah, that's correct. As it says in the report, our private sector housing team is working closely to identify and work with those owners to try and bring those properties back into use.
Councillor Mr Mason.
Thank you, Chairman. There seems to be a very pivotal phrase, and that pivotal phrase is substantially unfurnished. I'd like to know what the council's test is of substantially unfurnished, because clearly if there isn't a very clear test of the assessment, then there's going to be challenges and arguments, and they could prove more costly than the increased revenue.
Did you want to comment on that?
Well, yeah, obviously it's a slightly grey area, and I could probably take that question away and get a more complete answer if you would like. But obviously, the test as it's set out is it's substantially unfurnished. But obviously, there is a judgment call to be made from our officers in terms of determining how that's implemented.
So all members will be circulated, Chairman?
I don't see why not. Yeah. Yep. Councillor Mrs Mason.
Mr Chairman, I believe my husband's covered a point that I was going to ask, but I actually have asked the officer what substantially unfurnished means, because it is a point in the report that concerned me. Now, if the objective of this report and this increased charge is to bring empty homes into use, then obviously no one is not going to support that. But there is no legal definition of substantially unfurnished. It's discretionary. And the housing officer that I spoke to said that last time an increase was put in place, what happened was that people just put furniture into the properties and then it became substantially furnished. Now, obviously that's not something that we want to happen, and I wonder what steps the officers and the council is going to take to try to make sure that doesn't happen, and these homes are brought back into use for our residents. Thank you.
Chairman, perhaps I can say a word or two about that. I mean, I think it's a good point that's being made by Councillor Mrs Mason, and I think what we'd want to do is to take that away and have a think about that and circulate some information to all members. I think that's probably about the best we can do at this juncture. But I think the point is well made, and it's one that we need to give some further consideration to.
Councillor Cannon.
Thank you. Very related point. If the intent is to bring back empty homes into use, is there a need for them to be both unoccupied and unfurnished to some extent? Is the criteria of being unoccupied not enough? And if not, would we be able to provide some clarification as to why that is? Thank you.
Yeah, all I'd say is that we are operating within the national legislative framework, and they are the ones that determine the rules under which we operate. So we're purely implementing a nationally set policy, and they're the ones that set the criteria in terms of it being unoccupied and unfurnished. So we have limited discretion in terms of how we apply that locally.
Councillor Stanley.
Go on. Do you want to go back? Can I want to come back?
Okay.
Yeah, if this is taking forward national policy, do they have a description that we could use as to what they consider substantially unfurnished? Thank you.
I think we've sort of answered that as best we can. We can obviously take away, as we say, and circulate some more information and see if there is anything more set out in legislation that determines that. But my understanding is, you say, it's a slightly grey area and there is an element of discretion in terms of how we sort of apply that locally. But we, as I said, we will circulate some more information that we have available after the meeting.
Councillor Stanley.
Thank you, Chairman. Could you tell us how many properties are livable and how many of those are actually in bad disrepair and not really livable in the way that we are talking? Is that possible?
I don't have the information to hand, and again, I think it's probably an element of subjectivity in terms of how you would define those two categories, but certainly, again, I can take that away and provide some information after the meeting.
I see no other members indicating. So if I can move to the recommendation. Item A on page 13.2, that the council tax empty homes premium be increased as follows. I won't read it all out, it's as shown in the report. Is that agreed, members? Agreed. And paragraph B, to apply the council tax empty homes premium in all cases that meet the criteria in A above, with the exception of the statutory exemptions. Is that agreed, members? Agreed. Thank you. That is, it's all agreed. Item 14. I think you're going to present this one for us.
Thank you, Chairman. So regulations require that each district council must establish and maintain an independent remuneration panel to review and make recommendations on the remuneration scheme for members of the district and parish, town and town councils. The councils must have regard to the advice of the panel, but do not have to implement its recommendations. The report of the Independent Remuneration Panel on District Council remuneration is appended, and Council is invited to consider recommendations 1 to 5 set out on pages 14.6 to 14.9. Thank you, Chairman.
Does anyone wish to speak on this item? Councillor Cutmore.
Just to say, Chairman, I'm taking no part in this debate and I shall be abstaining. Thank you.
Thank you. In which case I will go. Councillor Mr Mason.
Chairman, I'd like to ask a question. These are recommendations from an independent remuneration panel. Is it that the council has to take those as presented, in that they have to consider them as put forward? Is there any opportunity for council to amend them? I've never come across them being amended in all the time I've been here, but I feel inclined, before we take a vote or debate it, we should know what the status is of the remuneration panel's recommendations and what the council can and cannot do.
I think it is a recommendation before members this evening. It's as simple as that. I think that is correct, is it not?
That's correct, Chairman. Councils should have regard to the advice of the panel, but do not have to implement the recommendations. The question of allowance levels are a matter for the council, as long as they have regard to a panel having given advice. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Mountain.
Thank you, Chairman. The point I'm just asking about is in relation to 2.14 on page 14.5 with committee chairman. It just strikes me that although they're saying that all committee chairmen should receive the same amount, I think it seems fairly clear that the chairman of development committee is perhaps more there's more time consumed with being a chairman of development committee than, say, the chairman of audit committee. And I speak as a former chairman of audit committee for 1 year. And yes, there are responsibilities involved, but the chairman of audit committee is responsible for 4 meetings a year. The chairman of development committee is 12 meetings at least a year. And I just think that possibly should be taken into consideration. This is something I've thought about before this came up, but just a point I'd like to raise.
But I don't think this is before us this evening.
Well, it's for consideration. This is what I thought.
For the future, if members so decide. We have before us then. I did beg your pardon, Mr. Councillor, Mrs. Mason.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As my husband says, I have to raise my hand higher. So, I read this report with interest. I know that over the, I think it's 10 years, if I recall without going back to the report, the allowances, the basic allowances has been the same. And we have a situation there where we're proposing them are the same. I think the amount of work done by some of the members of the council has increased. Some of the chairing has become probably, we're expecting slightly more, and rightly so, of some of our chairs and some of our portfolio holders. That said, I look at the 2 options before us. We have stay the same 10 years down the line, or we have what they have come up with as a proposal, option 2, which increases the basic allowance, and I must declare I have a slight interest in that because it would affect me, but it would affect all of us, so we all have an interest. But it does seem fair, democratic and more equitable. I do like the way it's been referred to the portions that are done in Parliament. But more than anything, what we have with option 2 is a more equitable distribution of funds, but more than that, we have a saving. And we've just heard tonight of how difficult it is and how much we want to raise money. You've just voted to put the council tax up by 2.98%, yet here, a very small amount, I accept that, but it is a saving. And I think where we can have a saving, we should effect a saving, and I would like to propose that we go with option 2. Thank you.
Councillor Mr. Mason. Sorry, I beg your pardon.
Thank you, Chairman. At page 14.8, the final paragraph on, which will be 220, paragraph 5, subparagraph 1. We talk about overnight stays in London of £180 a night. That seems a very high amount to me. And I've got 2 questions. One is that how often do we actually stay in central London? And the second question is, what do officers get in equivalent? So in other words, if an officer was to stay in central London, what would they get? And the reason why I ask that is because other public sector organisations, in particular the civil service, the allowances for MPs and ministers can be tied to the rates of senior civil servants. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. In terms of the number of claims, I don't have figures with me, but there's not many and hasn't been many. In terms of officers' allowances, these figures are historic now in terms of they've been like this for a number of years, and my understanding is that account was taken of allowances for officers when they were first introduced, but I couldn't be sure about that. Thank you. Unless
So just to point out, as it says at paragraph 2.19, that this would bring the member allowances into line with the officer allowances, so they would be consistent across the board. So that the proposed policy would bring it into line with the officer policy.
Well, we have a motion on the floor to opt for option 2. All those in favour? Okay. Thank you. All those against? That is carried. So on yeah. Can we come back to that in a moment? Councillor Cutmore.
Just to say, Chairman, could it be noted that I abstained?
Yes, and that I abstained as well.
And myself, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, no reason not to.
Thank you, Chairman. The vote was 24 for, 3 against. Thank you.
How many abstentions, Chairman?
So, for the avoidance of doubt, can we just see how many abstained? Five abstentions, is that? Yes. 5, 6? Yes, Chairman. 6 abstentions. So that's paragraph 1. So option 2 is agreed.
Recommendation 2 is the multiplier, Chairman.
Yeah, recommendation 2, as shown in the report. All those in favour? I'm on page 14.6. Okay, I'll read it out. That the multiplier for the allowance for independent persons and parish members of the Standards Committee, members of the Independent Remuneration Panel, member champions and co-optees be retained at 10% of the basic allowance for Rochford District Council members. All those in favour? That's agreed, thank you. Item 3.
Just the first line.
That the childcare and carers allowances be retained at their current levels, and as follows, then they're set out in the report. Is that agreed, members? Agreed, thank you.
4.
Paragraph 4, that the private car allowance be increased from 40p to 45p per mile in line with HMRC rates, and that other allowances stay the same, so that claims for travelling expenses must be based on one of the following, and again, that's as set out in the report on page 14.7. Is that agreed, members? Thank you. That's agreed. Item 5, that the rate of allowances for breakfast, lunch and evening meals should be changed and the tea allowance deleted to keep them in line with officer allowances which had recently been amended so that subsistence allowances are as follows, again as set out in the report. Is that agreed, members?
That's the end of that item.
It's the end of that item. So we move now to item 15. And I think, Angela, I think you were going to speak on that.
Thank you, Chair. Members, this report deals with the returning officers' fees and arrangements for elections. It's proposed that there'll be no change to the returning officers' fee and the discretionary payment to staff in the election office, but it is necessary to increase the fees paid to staff working in poll stations in order to comply with the national minimum wage. A benchmarking exercise has been carried out and new rates are set out in Appendix 1. There is one amendment, apologies members, in relation to poll clock training, which is shown in the report as being £30, but that needs to be £34 to bring it in line with the presiding officer rate of £34 as reflected by the asterisk notation, and apologies for that, that's a typographical error. Where there are blanks, for the purposes of clarification, where there are blanks in the election fees table, that indicates that there is no change and that the fee listed in the left-hand column should remain and be carried forward for the next financial year. Thank you.
I see no members wishing to speak, so we'll go straight to the recommendation. That it be agreed to retain the fees paid to the returning officer at their current level and as identified at Appendix 1, Table A. Is that agreed, members? Agreed. Thank you. That it be agreed to retain the fees for clerical allowance at their current level and as identified at Appendix 1, Table B. Is that agreed, members? Agreed. Thank you. That the increased election fees be agreed as set out in Appendix 1, Table C for 2019. Is that agreed, members? Agreed. Thank you. Item 16, review of the polling districts and polling places. Who's going to be speaking on that? That's Andrew as well, is it?
Thank you again, Chair. Members, this is a polling review carried out in accordance with statutory requirements. A consultation was undertaken as set out in the report, and the proposed changes are comprised within the table set in Appendix B to that report. Members, I need to bring your attention to two changes which have happened subsequent to the conclusion of the consultation in respect of the Hockley and Ashington ward and the Lodge ward, which had been proposed there would be no changes. So taking first, please, the Hockley and Ashington ward, following closure of the consultation, election colleagues were approached by the Greensward Academy, which indicated it was no longer prepared to be considered as a poll station, and that in fact had alternative arrangements booked for the date of the election. Accordingly, I'm very grateful to colleagues in the election office who have worked tirelessly to find an alternative venue, and it is proposed therefore that the poll station, which is a double poll station, will be Hockley Evangelical Church, which is just down the road from the school. So it is within walking distance of the original polling station and is sufficiently large to accommodate both poll stations. There will be some amendments required to ensure that the building can be used appropriately, and I'm confident that colleagues in the election office will be able to make sure that those arrangements are undertaken and duly publicised. In addition, in relation to Lodge Ward, again, election colleagues received notification from the Oak Tree Children's Centre, which is currently operated by the charity Dr. Bernardo's, who indicated that it was not compatible with the charitable objectives of that organisation for them to allow the premises to be used for an election. And again, I'm grateful to colleagues in the election office who have sourced an alternative venue at Rayleigh Lodge. And again, that new venue is capable of holding both poll stations. And so it is proposed, therefore, members, that those two polling stations be used in deference to the ones that are actually within the appendix. Thank you.
Councillor Mrs. Hoy.
Yeah, I've just got one question to ask. Grange Park Ward, I noticed that they're going to be holding it in the Travellers Joy pub. Well, last year we wanted to hold one of their polling stations in the local bar, but we got told that a public house wasn't a suitable event. So can you just confirm that whether you're going to be holding polling stations in pubs, or is it just a one-off?
With apologies to Councillor Mrs Hoy, I'm not aware of the circumstances in which that communication was given to you. There is no prohibition on using a public house as a polling station or any licensed premises as a polling station. The choice of using Travellers Joy on this occasion was in preference to the established porter cabin, which had been used for very many years, which was both inconvenient and unaccommodating, and required a generator and oil to be available on site, and that from a health and safety perspective required officers to actually top up the generator during the course of the 15-hour polling period. Which, on reflection, I took the view that to use the Travellers Joy pub was both a saving to the council for not having to rent a porter cabin, but also was more accommodating.
Thank you.
Councillor Mason.
Chairman, I'm grateful for Councillor Mrs Hoy raising that question, because I don't frequent pubs a lot, really. And when I do, I've tended now to find that car parks are definitively linked to people buying provisions, if you like, from the pub, meals, drinks, whatever. And in fact, I went into one with the family at the weekend, and you had to put your registration number in, otherwise you were subject to an external clamping. I don't know much about the Travellers Joy, except that I was down there around 9 months ago, and I didn't park there, or we didn't park there, because I think there is some prohibition on cost, in which case how's the council going to deal with voters who want to turn up at a pub and have to pay for parking?
Thank you. If I can ask George Sullivan, who is my elections manager, who is present and has viewed all of the sites as part of this process.
Hello, Councillor Mr Mason. Yeah, just to advise, there is a car parking machine at the Travellers Joy, but it is free parking on site. I can't remember the duration. I believe it's something like 2, maybe 3 hours. You do have to purchase a ticket because there is an automated number plate recognition camera that monitors the vehicles entering and leaving that car park. So it is monitored, but people will be able to come and go for voting purposes, provided they get the machine from the the ticket from the machine. So they won't have to actually pay to cast their votes.
And certainly, just to add to that, thank you, George, as part of this consultation, any changes to established poll stations will be well publicised so that the voting public is aware of changes and any limitations on site.
I've got Councillor Hoy. I'll come back to you next, and then Councillor Mountain. And then sorry, Councillor Ward, Councillor Hoy, right. Councillor Stanley, Councillor Mountain.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I'm a bit concerned actually about Lodge Ward and it going into the lodge. I'm trying to visualise how this is actually going to work. I know it was quite difficult when we were at the centre down by Grovewood, It did work well in the separate rooms, and I'm very disappointed that they have decided they don't want it there now, but I'm a little bit anxious about how it's going to work at the lodge, how busy that place is, you know, with lunches and all the various things like that.
Yes, Councillor Ward, thank you. We went down to see Rayleigh Lodge earlier this week, and there is a dedicated entrance to one side of the premises. If you are facing the premises, it's to the left-hand side near the conservatory, and that allows direct access to where the polling station will be located. There'll be a dedicated area within there that will be used. It also has level access for disabled voters to come and go from the car park.
Briefly.
It's just on the fact, obviously, this will be a double polling station then. Will it just be one entrance, and how is that going to work out with the two areas?
We had envisaged using one entrance for voters coming in and out, but it may well be that if necessary there is the separate entrance for voters to leave should that prove to be congested.
I think it's fair to say that we have had double poll stations with single entry before. It is a question of signage and ensuring that poll clocks are able to help voters to establish as they enter the premises which polling station they should actually be voting at.
Councillor Mr Hoyer.
Thank you, Chairman. Just two bits for this. The first part is about the Holbush Community Centre. I'm quite surprised that they've said they're unable to break their Thursday booking for one day a year. When I've spoken to them, they seem quite happy to in the future. I know there were problems last year because of the lateness of the change of the venue. Can you confirm that you have spoken to them recently, i.e. since May or June, about this, and they've reconfirmed that? That's the first bit. The second bit is, and thank you for Councillor Mr Mason for raising this, I think it's totally unacceptable to use the Traveller's Joy with a car park in its current configuration. People will be going into that car park. It has automatic number recognition, automatic number plate recognition now. It did not have that last year. If people go in there, do not get a ticket, they will be fined. And I think this is going to be a big problem if that is happening. And I think that cannot be used either in the pub itself or as a porter cabin unless that is addressed, because people will be getting fined for voting. And also, just in relation to that very quickly, you said it's just about the use of pubs. I mean, there's an equality and diversity implications there. Has there been consideration done of any religions which may not welcome their members going onto licensed premises? Methodists, for instance, who apparently don't drink. Thank you.
Councillor Mr Hoy, to deal with the first point, we did approach Holbridge Community Centre, and they have regular bookings on a Thursday, which are a dance club and a bowls club. They asked those hirers if they would be willing to reschedule or maybe cancel those events on the days when there are elections. One of the hirers was willing to agree to that point, but one of them was not, unfortunately. So for that reason, we were unable to use the community centre. So it was approached. Okay. With regard to the car parking arrangements at the Traveller's Joy, the issue has been highlighted to me by the manager of the premises when we went down to see the venue, so we are aware of it. What we will do is we can ensure that our polling staff do brief those persons coming in to vote so they are aware that they need to purchase a ticket. There are signages all over the venue as well, making people aware that they need to purchase a ticket, or get a free ticket, I should say. Yeah. Sorry.
An equality impact assessment has been carried out. Throughout the consultation, we have spoken with members of equalities communities. There hasn't been any objection to the use of licensed premises. Clearly, the premises, the room in which the poll booths will be located, is not going to be serving alcohol at the same time.
Sorry, it's just I do have trouble supporting this on the basis of the Travellers' Joy car park. I really do think that's a barrier to people going to vote.
Thank you. Councillor Stanley.
Thank you, Chairman. With reflection to the Travellers' Joy, I believe you have to purchase a ticket. Is that going to be redeemed at the bar, or is the council going to redeem that for the residents? Thank you.
Just to answer your question, Councillor Stanley, you obtain a ticket which is free, but you do have to enter your vehicle registration to get that ticket. But as I said earlier, it is free for, I believe it's something like 2 or maybe 3 hours. So you don't actually purchase the ticket. Yeah, okay.
Councillor Mountain.
Thank you, Chairman. Just again on that car park point, I just wonder if the council has made any contact with to see if there's any way that can be suspended, the whole number plate recognition, that the whole parking process, charge or no charge, whether the mechanisms can be suspended on the actual day of the election. Thank you.
Certainly we'll make those inquiries. However, I would imagine that most voters will not be using a full 2 to 3 hours on site, and so I'm expecting that problem to be quite minimal.
You want to come back?
Yeah, I mean, the point is, it's in layman's terms, it's a faff. But you know, the idea that you have to get a ticket, whether or not it's free or whatever, it's still a block. It's something. It's a hurdle that is in the way of you know, well-intentioned residents going out to vote. And I'm just thinking, is it possible for the council to start a conversation with the ticket company to see if it can be suspended on the day of the election? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mountain. Yeah, we'll certainly look into it. We'll contact the premises and see if that is feasible. Okay.
Councillor Ward.
Thank you, Chairman. Are there going to be 2 rooms for the voting at Rayleigh Lodge, as there have been in the past, where it's been a double station?
We are planning to use 1 room at the venue, as we believe it will be large enough to accommodate both the polling stations there. The tables will be moved out of the way to allow a larger floor space to accommodate everything.
Yes, Councillor Ward.
Then I assume you're using the conservatory. Is that what you're actually saying? Are you actually using the conservatory of that? I'm very familiar with it. So is it the conservatory only that's being used, which is the restaurant part, not the pub part?
It is the area that's directly inside that door that I mentioned earlier, before you go down to the conservatory. The reason being, there are steps down to the conservatory which could potentially impede those with push chairs or anyone in a wheelchair.
Councillor Mrs Mason.
Chairman, I didn't think this was going to take long. I'd just like to come back to the Travellers' Joy, and I think Councillor Mountain's suggestion, if we can have the parking recognition numbers switched off for the day, would be ideal. However, if not, it does concern me somewhat, because anything that impedes or deters someone from voting, we shouldn't be doing it, and it is putting a barrier in place. Albeit that barrier isn't costly, it is a barrier. But what concerns me is the idea, presumably, of putting your number in, is that they can recognise it and not charge your car. But some people will be in a rush, and if they make an error, they're going to get charged. We should have a policy on that, because if we can't get those machines turned off, effectively, we will be charging people for voting, which is totally unacceptable. So I think that needs to be looked at. I appreciate it's difficult. I mean, the venue, if it wasn't for the parking, I think would be ideal from its location. But the parking concern is a barrier to me, because it's a barrier to someone walking in. And you have said that you'll approach people as they come in. surely it would be better to approach them when they go out, because again, it's a barrier. You'll get people running back out to their cars. So I do think that needs to be thought out very carefully if Councillor Mountain's suggestion can't be enacted. Thank you. And a policy should someone get charged.
Councillor Cannell.
Thank you, Chair. 2 points, although Councillor Mr Mason may have already addressed one of them. I think the placing barriers or reasons for people not to vote should be discouraged, and as well as the car parking issue. I think whilst I welcome the clarification on the rooms themselves in the Traveller's Joy or the Lodge not serving alcohol, I think having to walk through an environment where alcohol is served in order to get to your polling station would also be a barrier for people who are against that for personal reasons, religious reasons. I would just like to clarify that the entrances wouldn't take them through an environment where alcohol is being served, as well as the environment itself not serving alcohol. Thank you.
Councillor Ward.
Thank you, Chairman. I just need to understand where you're actually going to put the polling station in the lodge. When you go straight in through the front entrance, you either go to the right, which is the main bar, you go to the left, which is the entrance to the restaurant. You've got the foyer to the restaurant and a small bar. Is that foyer going to be the double station? That foyer? I need to understand this.
No, the entrance, as I've said, is just to a separate door to the side of the main entrance that leads just above where the conservatory is located. So if you were facing Rayleigh Lodge, I know the area in question, that, as you say, leads into like a foyer area, then you've got a bar to the left-hand side and another area to the right-hand side, a dining area. But before you go into that entrance, as I say, there is an entranceway to the left, slightly nearer to the car park, and that is the entrance envisaged for voters to go in. And the area will be inside there.
Sorry, I really don't see it big enough.
We've carried out a site visit. I'm happy for us to go back and have another look. If we can only fit in one poll station at Rayleigh Lodge, then we will continue to use the other site at Greenwood Primary Greenwood Primary School. Oh, I beg your pardon. Yes, no, it says Grove Wood on there. Yes, so Grove Wood Primary School. So we could have 2 separate poll stations. We have shied away from using the school because, again, they've indicated a reluctance to use school premises. But if I am not satisfied that the site at Rayleigh Lodge is suitable for both polling stations, then the law enables me to require that the school make itself available. But I really want to do that only in exceptional circumstances. So we'll take another look and we'll review that. But we absolutely at this stage are looking at Rayleigh Lodge for at least one poll station.
Councillor Cannell.
I apologise, I may have put it forward as a point of concern. I was actually looking for clarification on whether we... I don't know the lodge layout, I don't know the Traveller's Joy layout. I was just looking for clarification as to we were proposing that people walk through environments where alcohol is being served in order to get to their polling station. Thank you.
In the case of Traveller's Joy, there is one entrance into the venue, so there would be entrance that would bring you in front of the bar, potentially, where people would go to the right-hand side where the polling station is designated to be. In the case of Rayleigh Lodge, the entrance I'm intending to use separates voters from going near the bar area in that case, as it has a dedicated entrance that is suitable. Okay.
Councillor Mrs Rowe.
Thank you, Chairman. In respect of Lodge Ward, so if we have or use the Shore Star Centre and then Rayleigh Lodge, that then makes them 3 polling stations in Lodge, which isn't ideal, in effect, because we've got Methodist Church will be the 3rd one. So that doesn't make it ideal, really, having 3 for one ward. The only way I could support Lodge is if you did go back and have a look and make sure that room is okay, because in fairness, it makes lots of sense with the car park. 'Cause the car park's a lot bigger. We do have problems down at the school. And we've had to have marshals down there in the past, as you know, especially at school times. So as long as that room, you're really happy with that, but I really would like you to go back to that. Because I do think it'll be a problem if it's too small. Thank you.
Well, members, can I suggest we proceed with the recommendation, but we add the words subject to officers undertaking an agreed review in relation to the Traveller's Joy and Rayleigh Lodge. Would that be acceptable? Yeah. Okay. On that basis, we will formally go to the recommendation that the final proposals for changes to bowling arrangements in the district, as summarised in paragraphs 4.2 to 4.5, be agreed, subject to officers undertaking an agreed review in relation to the Traveller's Joy and Rayleigh Lodge. Is that agreed, members? Agreed. Thank you. Well done. Item 17, discretionary business rates relief, retail relief policy. Is that Naomi? Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, the purpose of this report is to agree that a new retail rate relief policy, as attached to Appendix A to the report, be agreed. The government announced in its autumn budget in October that it would provide for a business rates retail relief for occupied retail properties with a rateable value of less than £51,000, and the value of that relief would be 1/3 of their bill, subject to state aid limits. In order to enact this policy, we must adopt a local scheme, and in accordance with the discretionary rate relief powers contained within Section 47 of the Local Government Finance Act, we must decide when relief should be granted. Relief under this policy would only be granted for the financial years 2019-20 and 2020-21, and the cost of the scheme would be fully reimbursed by central government, so we're not expecting it to be at any net cost to us as a local council. So given that, yes, I would propose the recommendation that we implement the scheme as set out in the report.
Is that agreed, members? Thank you. And the final item on the agenda is the responses to business rates, retention, reform and relative needs and resources consultations. And the recommendation is that the council submit the responses to the consultations as appended to this report. Does anyone wish to speak on this? In which case, is that recommendation agreed, members? Agreed. Thank you. Now, Councillor Cutman.
John, at the end of the last meeting, I stood up and thanked John Bostock for all his service, and then did it at the wrong time because I forgot there was a meeting this week as well. I take this opportunity of thanking John now and making a point of record for all the service that he's given to us, all the help that he's given us, and in his personal friendship as well, which I very much value. So thank you, John, for all you've done for us, and good luck into the future from all of us.
I would also like to reiterate Councillor Cutmore's remarks, but in addition, I would like to thank John for the support and guidance that he's given to me over the last few months during my period as chairman. Been very much valued, and I wish him all the best in the future, and thank him on behalf of the council for 23 years service, is it?
Yes, Chairman. Chairman, can I just thank members for their kind words tonight, the kind messages and cards. First time you might hear someone crying on tape rather than talking, but thank you. And I've worked with members in other councils, and you're great members, thank you. And I know you serve the community in spite of that pro rata rule, so thank you. Thank you.
Well, members, I now close the meeting at 9:15. Thank you all for your attendance and a safe journey home.
Members, please be upstanding whilst the Chairman and Managing Director leave the chamber.